if they can do it, then I think really we can do it. I think it really is a huge, huge possibility that we have this option of finally being able to kind of remove these masks. And today we're actually going to talk about that. Today we're going to talk about what it looks like to finally be able to take off those masks. And what exactly does it take for us to get to that point? But before I go into that, I'm going to tell a quick story. When I was in junior high, I was taking an art class. And I was super artsy. And my teacher's name, no joke, her name was Miss Painter. So I was like, this is amazing. Like, you're an art teacher, your name is Miss Painter, you were destined to be this. Like, if you're a basketball player, it wouldn't work. So we were making these paper mache, or like, not paper mache, it's like plaster of Paris. Have you guys ever heard of that stuff? Stuff is amazing, it's really cool. I think they make casts out of it too. So we're in the classroom, and so we were gonna make these masks. But to make the mask, they would put a mold on your face. And so they put a whole giant mold on your face, and it has to stay there for 20, 25 minutes, and it has to dry to be a really, really thick, good mask. And so I don't know if you guys believe this, but I was kind of the class clown. I know, it's hard to believe. You're like, no way. Yeah, right. Not a straight A student. Pray for me. But so we're in the class, and so I would make people I would goof off a lot of times, and Miss Painter was always like, she had this weird voice, she'd always talk like this, and like, okay, Barry, it's time to stop. And I'm like, whatever, Miss Painter. I'm gonna do my thing. So one day, so they're putting this mask on, and so you can't really hear much, because it's kind of going over your ears a little bit, and you're breathing out of a straw. It's actually kind of terrifying for 25 minutes. Still talking about today. So they're playing a little bit of music in the background, so I'm sitting there and I'm kind of goofing around with my mask, and 15 minutes goes by, and the classroom gets a little bit quieter, and then 20 minutes goes by, and it's even more quiet, and all of a sudden 25 minutes goes by, and all there is the music in the background. Mind you, this is a class of 30 people, okay? So while I'm sitting there, I'm like, hello? Hello? Miss Maynard? Miss Maynard? So I'm sitting there, and you're not supposed to take off the mask by yourself, but I'm like, what is happening right now? Are they gonna I don't even know, pretend like I'm a pinata or something like that with a mask? What's going to happen? So I take the mask off, and my whole class is gone. My entire 30 people class is completely gone, and I'm like, what in the world? So now I'm walking, I have this giant moo-moo tarp on, okay? And my face is covered with this white gooey stuff, and this kid's walking through the halls like a ghost, kind of searching around, and then I walk into by another classroom, which is just the window, and the whole entire class is sitting there, and they're watching, and all of a sudden they go, ah! I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys got me. But she thought it was the funniest thing in the world, to leave me by myself. I'm like, shouldn't that be a lawsuit or something? We just leave this kid by himself. What if I couldn't breathe? Then he passed away from pastor of players. Okay, so I tell this story because I remember that time, that period of time I had the mask on. I couldn't really see, I couldn't really hear, I couldn't really understand what was going on around me. And during that period of time, it's like for us, when we have these masks on in our life, it may be fine for a little bit, but after a while, from having the mask on for so long, it starts to change the reality around you. It starts to leave you in a place that you don't really want to be. I was feeling that moment, all of a sudden you're feeling isolated and alone. You have no idea what's going on. I'm sure some of you are starting to feel that. You've been talking about these masks, and hopefully you guys have identified what exactly it is that's the mask that you've been wearing. Can somebody please close that door? I want to chant with them. I'm getting get distracted. For the luchador wrestler, we know that their story is they're famous. They are something really, really good if they have their mask. As long as they have their mask, their career is the best thing in the world. But if you ever get demasked, if your mask ever gets taken off, your whole career is over. It's a very, very shameful thing. And I think we kind of feel that with our masks. With the things that we're hiding behind, we're thinking, there's no way I can possibly take this off. There's no way I can have this removed. It's a shameful thing. But I think if we look at scriptures, if we look at who God is God actually wants to do the opposite. I think God wants to say to us, when you get to take off the mask, through my strength and through my power and through my grace and my love, I will give you the ability to take off that mask and give you the life that you've been needing, that you want to live. Some of the masks that we talked about that some of you are wearing is oh, I'm a super Christian. Basically, you walk into church and you've got plenty of doubts, you've got plenty of questions, but you walk in and you want to be like everybody else because you think everybody else has got it together and you have no questions about the Bible. And so you just sit there and I don't have any doubts. But on the inside, you're like, man, I really struggle sometimes. There's some questions I really, really have, but I can't do that because I have to go to church and everybody wants me to be this super Christian. Or maybe some of you walk around to church or school or sports and you got that mask on and nothing is wrong. Your parents' divorce doesn't bother you. Being bullied doesn't bother you. None of that stuff bothers you because you got this mask like nothing faces me. Or maybe you've got this mask and you're hiding this sin behind this mask. You're like, you know what? I don't ever mess up. I don't have any addictions. I don't have anything. I don't struggle with lying. I don't struggle with gossip. That's just not me. And I think what keeps us in that place, and we're going to talk about that this morning, what keeps us in that place of hiding, what keeps that mask on for so long is the word shame. Shame keeps us in that place for so long. I used to coach basketball in Arizona for this team, and they thought it was the funniest name in the world. The team was called the Butt Scratchers. It's a true story. I thought it was back scratchers, but they call themselves the Butt Scratchers. It's awful. But there was this one kid named Tom, and Tom was very, very small. He was actually he was a senior in high school, but he was very, very small. And Tom couldn't grow very much. His body wasn't getting the nutrients that he needed because Tom had Crohn's disease. Crohn's? Did I say it right? Ladies, anybody know? Crohn's, sorry. So he had this sickness. But Tom was always the funny guy. Tom was always the one that everybody laughed at or whatever. Like he liked to, make fun of himself. And so one evening, I'm giving Tom a ride home, and I'm sitting down in this parking lot outside of his house, and we're talking. All of a sudden, I know where Tom was like, "Hey, coach, I got to tell you something. I'm usually the funny guy, and I'm usually the one that everybody laughs at. But he's like, a lot of times, like I'm just having a hard time with this whole Crohn's disease." Like I'm having a hard time, and sometimes it hits me so hard to the point where I get depressed. And in that moment, I felt like, Tom, like how come you never talked about that? But I think that in that moment, what kept Tom from talking about that stuff going on in his life was shame. Something in him told me, it's not okay to talk about this. It's not okay to talk about pain. It's not okay to talk about any of this. So shame kept Tom in that place of secrecy. And I think oftentimes, shame is what keeps me and you in that place of secrecy. Shame is what keeps that mask on so tight and says, don't you ever tell anybody. Because if you tell somebody, if you share what's happening in your life, if you actually are vulnerable in front of anybody, that is a very, very shameful thing and nobody will take you seriously. Don't you dare do it because you know what? Your small group doesn't want it, your parents don't want it, and ultimately, God doesn't want it. I think that's what keeps us in that place is that false feeling of shame. But this morning, I want to say this, that there is hope. There is so much more hope than we know. How do I know that? I say that because I've experienced it in my life. I remember when I was in high school, I had this whole kind of like this mask going on. Like I got cut off the basketball team. I was really embarrassed about that. So I pretended and I told my whole family when I'd go see them, my dad's side of the family, when I'd go see them in Idaho, what I would do is when I went up there, I started pretending like I was going to be a boxer. This is a true story. I know, like me, boxing, I bruise like a peach. True, I know. But I would go up there and I started telling this whole elaborate story how when I was going to go back to Arizona, I was going to start boxing. And I even wanted, before I left, I bought some boxing gloves, I bought a jump rope, and all this stuff, and I would go up there and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to start doing boxing, when in reality on the inside, I had no intention of boxing. I went home and I tried it for a little bit. I had this guy that would do boxing, he would punch trees, so I'd sit in the backyard and I would be punching this tree, which didn't work out very well. I'm like, I don't know why I'm doing this. But I knew on the inside, I'm like, what am I doing? I'm so embarrassed by the fact that I didn't make the basketball team that I got to make up another thing that I'm going to do boxing, even though I have no intention of doing